I was married 46 years. She was the love of my life from the day I met her. And she was always larger than life. She was somebody who was really vital and full of beans and exhausted all her friends because she was always doing hundreds of things, and was somebody who loved to deliver, and if she said she was going to do something, it was always done, and so on. Absolute pleasure to have her around, lovely person. And of course, the health deteriorating so quickly was a real disaster and completely unexpected. She'd suffered in the past. She'd had a breast cancer back in 2006, which resulted in her having to have a right breast was then had a mastectomy, and she had 9 months of chemo, and it was pretty intensive chemo, lost all her hair, everything. But, you know, she bounced back from that, absolutely bounced back from it. You'd have never known she'd gone through it. She had heart problems, you'd never known that. She was always, you know, rushing around loving life, you know, loved playing golf, loved going out with the friends, you know, just lots of people she knew and was very fond of, and, you know, and obviously family she adored. And she started sort of saying, I'm a bit concerned of my right leg and my hip, and it's quite uncomfortable, but probably about the start of lockdown. So it was probably, and she just had a mammogram, which was clear because they only look at the complete breast, they don't look at the reconstructions. And it got worse slowly, but you know, she was coping with it and still doing all the things she wanted to do, and you'd never known she had any problems till around about September, when it started interfering with her mobility to some extent, and she was starting to get worried about it. And so we tried to get some treatment, you know, tried to see the doctors and talk about it, and they didn't want to know. They weren't interested. Oh, you've only got arthritis. What are you worrying about? You're still playing golf. Yeah, does it really matter? And it didn't get any better. So we tried again, and they said, well, you can self-refer yourself to the local physiotherapy service, and they can help you. Well, the physiotherapy service didn't visit people in their homes. How you can do physio without seeing the patient, I don't know. Had a conversation, sent some exercises. Joy went back to them a couple of weeks later and said, it's not made any difference at all. It's actually getting worse. Oh, nothing. I'll send you some different exercises. So we went private, tried locally, some of the private providers, and none of the treatments was helping. And eventually, both the physio and the private people wrote to the doctors, our doctors, and said, this lady needs an X-ray or a scan. And that was at the end of October. And we didn't hear anything from the surgery for 3 weeks. And eventually, Joy phoned them up and said, what the hell's going on a Friday? Remember this conversation because she came back and said to me, the woman I told said, oh, it's just got to the top of the pile. I'll get somebody to look at it on Monday. So on Monday afternoon, a locum phoned and said, I gather you had some concerns or something. And she said, yes, I'm in a lot of pain. Oh, there's nothing to worry about. You don't need an X-ray. I'll get you a blood test, but you don't need to go to hospital or anything done. It's only arthritis. So we waited to hear blood test. Nothing happened. We phoned them again. Spoke to one that eventually got a doctor phone back. Well, it's, we're sure that you're nothing to worry about. You're still managing to walk and everything. It'll be okay. Don't worry about it. But it got past Christmas and she couldn't drive anymore. She couldn't play golf. She couldn't walk the dog. She was in such pain she couldn't sleep. And eventually I demanded to talk to the head GP, who said, and eventually got through to him and said, Joy is in such pain that she needs painkillers. It's become absolutely acute. Oh, well, I better give you some, and perhaps we better just check out the X-ray and have a look. And the X-ray was on the 5th of January. Mm-hmm. 3 days later, on the 8th, surgery rang us up and said, could you come and see the same doctor? And we were both called in for an hour. And it was quite clear that he was highly embarrassed and said, well, it's not arthritis and there's some suspicious things going on I'm not happy about. We need to get an urgent blood test done. I'll fix it up for Tuesday, and I'm away on a few days, and it will be a few days before we get the results because I want to check the calcium level and so on. So the blood test was Tuesday morning, 6 o'clock that evening, phone call from surgery, take your wife straight to hospital, straight to A&E. Calcium levels are very high. She should be in hospital. And of course, by that time, the high calcium was due to the fact that the cancer, which had come from her breast, had spread into the bones and had leached out the marrow out of the bones, and that caused the calcium levels to go up. Yeah, and that was... So she was in hospital for 3 weeks. They were still saying it, and they found that the cancer emanated from, it was secondary breast cancer, but it spread obviously into the bones. They did a major operation on her hip and on femur, put a new some strengthening into it, bolts and so on to stop it fracturing. So they did all that, and they said also we've worked out where the source is. It's not curable, but it's controllable, and there's a program of treatment that we want to draw onto, which will control it for you. Right. But the problem was that we then got into a situation where, because she was weakened from the cancer, and had to recover from both that operation, which was a major one, and also from other treatments she was getting to try and remove get the calcium levels down. She was never strong enough to get started on the main cancer treatment, and because it hadn't started, the cancer carried on spreading. So she was home for 3 weeks or so, and then I had to take her back to hospital because she was becoming quite confused and in a lot of pain and discomfort again. And this time they came back and said the problem is the cancer has spread to the brain now, and we can still think it's controllable, but she needs to have some more treatment before that. And she was never strong enough to get into the treatment properly because, literally she came home for a week, but her body couldn't cope anymore with what was happening. You have to get your calcium level down, you have to fill the body with fluid. It wouldn't go. They couldn't get rid of the fluid. So her legs and stomach and everything was completely swollen. And she couldn't walk. She was completely immobile, bedridden. And literally within 10 days, she just deteriorated and passed away. And I talked at length afterwards to the oncology team at the hospital and the oncology nurses, who were brilliant, absolutely brilliant throughout. And they were, they said, we obviously have to be careful what words we use, but if we'd got her earlier, we're sure we could have got on top of the cancer. Correct.
To have that treatment.
Correct, yeah. And, we've got other patients on similar treatment. They're all going strong. 2-3 years on. It's a relatively new drugs that we've been using that seem to be really successful in these instances. We were sure that we could control it, but it had got too far ahead of us and we could never catch it up.